We have had a rough week here in the community. A lot of families have been suffering. The resurrection gets us through all of those days. On Friday, we had the service for Bruce Pope. And I read some verses out of 1 Corinthians 15. And after the service, in one of the conversations that I had, a gentleman came up to me and said, I've never heard that theory about the seed before. What theory? What are you talking about, theory? Well, the seed goes into the ground and dies and then is resurrected as a plant. And we go, that's an illustration, but it's not a theory. Yeah, Paul isn't saying that, all seeds, are like, bodies and he says there's a connection and it's real, but I'm going, the resurrection is not a theory. I mean, gravity is not a theory unless you want to try it off the roof sometime. The resurrection is a fact. And Mark treats it as a fact. He doesn't argue for the resurrection. He doesn't present positive proofs for the resurrection. He says this is a fact. This is not a theory. And we need to understand that in our lives, because without the resurrection, really, I don't know why you're here today. Sometimes I don't know why you're here, even if there's a resurrection. But God uses us. God uses this world, uses us in this world to present the bald fact of the resurrection, so that people can have hope in this world. And this is what we're studying today. Now, before we get started, we get some surprises right away. There's this unexpected appearance of all these women. All of a sudden there's women in this gospel. Matthew starts off his gospel naming 4 women. John continually refers to women that are involved in Jesus' life. Mark has kind of just left them out of the picture somehow. But right here at the end, bam, there they are. They are the prime witnesses to the resurrection. And really, this is one of the proofs that we use that they didn't make this up. Because if they'd have made it up, they would have never referred to women as the witnesses. Because in Jewish courts, women were not allowed to give testimony. In Jewish synagogues, women were not allowed to speak. But here they are the prime witnesses in all of the Gospels of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Mark's passion narrative began with a woman who anointed his body for his burial. And now the passion narrative ends. This passion story that Mark tells us ends with another woman, with other women seeking to anoint Jesus' body after his burial. They are drawn to the tomb, but then they run from the tomb. They just take off out of there. They're scared. They don't say anything, and they just run away in Mark's narrative, in Mark's story. And we have to understand what Mark is trying to tell us by that. And so we have to answer this question about whether they were really loyal. Are they being obedient? Are they being disobedient? Are they being afraid? Is it a good kind of fear, or is it a bad kind of fear? And we need to answer those kinds of questions. So we're going to look at this. Mark chapter 16, verse 1 starts off with this resurrection appearance. It's the first day of the week. It's the day after the preparation day. They weren't allowed to do any work to help Jesus to take care of the body after he was crucified, because it was the Sabbath, because it was a holy day, and they weren't allowed to do any work. And so they had to wait to express their grief, to do something about their grief until Sunday morning. And the first day that they could, with the rising of the sun, they're on their way. Now, the last time we left Jesus, it was dark. And now we have the rising of the sun. I don't think Mark was saying that, all day Saturday there was no sunshine. I think Mark is saying, this is God showing us that the resurrection brings light and life into our world after that dark night of the crucifixion. They're worried about the stone. They don't know how they're going to get the stone out of the way, and they think it's going to take a miracle to get the stone out of the way. It would have only taken a bunch of big guys to roll this thing out of the way. They were easy to get down into that little trough that they had dug to roll that stone into, but they were hard to get out of because they had grave robbers back then, and the robbers were always trying to steal something. And so I don't know what they were thinking when they went to this tomb. I don't know what they were trying to figure out. You know, they had a plan on getting this stone out of the way. And they come without any hope. They don't come to see the empty tomb. They don't come thinking that Jesus is coming back from the grave. They went knowing that he was dead. They went knowing that the only thing that they could do for him was anoint his body with these perfumes that they used in burial. This was the only thing that they knew and the only thing that they could do. And they came without any hope. But then Mark says they look up. They, you know, on one hand, he was probably saying that they were very downcast and they were weeping and they were coming to the tomb, looking down at their feet. And then when they look up and see the tomb, they know it's open. I think Mark is also saying they finally took their eyes off of this world and they're pointing them at the next. But they're still unprepared for what happened. You know, they came to the tomb wondering how the stone could be moved away. They leave wondering how the stone could have been moved away. They're still unprepared. They're still doubting. They're still fearful. They still have questions about what happened here. Now, Mark really isn't interested in telling us how the stone was moved. I really like Carmen's version. He was a singer back in the 70s, and he wrote a song. It was a good song about Satan killing Jesus and how Satan's in the tomb, and Satan keeps calling grave and saying, is he still there? Yes, I haven't lost anybody yet. Quit calling me. You know, just go have a party. You know, and he calls him the next day, and finally he calls him Sunday morning, and grave is still saying, yeah, he's still in the grave. He's still cold. Don't worry about it. Then you hear this clock chiming in the background. And you hear this explosion. And an angel comes bounding out of the tomb going, hi, I'm Gabriel. Who are you? You know, I like that. But Mark isn't interested in that. He doesn't tell us how the stone got out of the way. He doesn't tell us anything about that. He tells us the stone was moved. What he really wants us to know is that the stone is gone so that the women could go in and see that Jesus is not there. But the tomb isn't empty. Most of the time we talk about an empty tomb, but this tomb really isn't empty. There's a young man sitting in the tomb. And they go in and look. Now, Mark describes him as a young man. And we understand that oftentimes in the Gospels and other places in the Bible, angels are described as men. You know, they weren't the fantastic creatures that we read about in Ezekiel. They weren't the flaming, huge, frightful beings that we read about in Genesis. He was just a young man sitting there. But he is an angel because he says what angels always say, which is don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Angels always tell us this. If you ever thought you saw an angel and you